When David Harrington walked into the mall with his son, he expected nothing more than a quiet afternoon buying sneakers. But when he paid with a $100 bill, suspicion sparked. A cashier whispered. Security circled. Then the officers arrived. They slammed him to the floor, cuffed him in front of his 10-year-old boy, and mocked him as cameras recorded. The crowd saw another black man accused of fake cash. The officers thought they had easy prey, a powerless target. But David Harrington wasn't ordinary. He was the director of Homeland Security, and they had just made the biggest mistake of their lives. Before we go any further, comment where in the world you are watching from and make sure to subscribe, because tomorrow's story is one you don't want to miss. David Harrington guided his black Mercedes into the mall parking lot, stealing a glance at Malik in the rearview mirror. His son's face glowed with excitement, those deep brown eyes sparkling just like his mother's used to. The memory of Sarah brought a familiar ache, but David pushed it aside, focusing on the joy of their Saturday morning together. "Remember what we agreed on, buddy?" David asked, pulling into a spot near the main entrance. "Yeah, Dad. No begging for the super expensive ones." Malik's grin was infectious. "But can I at least try them on?" David chuckled, unbuckling his seatbelt. "Of course you can try them on. That's how we make sure they fit right." He stepped out of the car, his tall frame unfolding with the natural grace of someone used to commanding respect. His casual weekend attire, a gray sweatshirt and jeans, was a welcome change from his usual suit and tie. "Race you to the door," Malik called out, already sprinting across the parking lot. "Hey, wait up!" David lengthened his stride to catch up, but deliberately stayed a step behind. These moments were precious. Just being a dad, no thoughts of national security briefings or threat assessments. Inside the mall, the Saturday morning crowd was starting to build. The air conditioning hummed, mixing with the buzz of conversation and the faint music from overhead speakers. They passed a pretzel stand, and David caught Malik eyeing it hopefully. "Maybe after we get the shoes," David said, placing a gentle hand on his son's shoulder. "Let's focus on the mission at hand. Just like one of your operations, right, Dad?" "Something like that." David smiled, remembering how Malik loved hearing sanitized versions of his field training stories. Except this time, the target is the perfect pair of sneakers. They made their way to Athletic World, where rows of shoes lined the walls in a rainbow of colors and styles. Malik's eyes went wide, taking it all in. David watched his son's excitement with a mixture of love and nostalgia. He remembered being Malik's age, when new shoes were a rare luxury his own parents could barely afford. "See anything you like?" David asked, though he already knew the answer. Malik had been talking about the new Air Maxes for weeks. "Can I look at those blue ones?" Malik pointed to a display in the corner. A young sales associate approached them. "Need any help today?" "Yes. Could we see these in a size 7? David asked, indicating the shoes Malik had chosen. While they waited, David sat on one of the low benches, watching Malik examine every detail of the display models. His son was growing so fast, it seemed like yesterday he was learning to walk. Since Sarah's passing 3 years ago, David had thrown himself into being both mother and father, determined that Malik would never feel the absence of either parent's love. The sales associate returned with the shoes, and Malik tried them on, walking back and forth with exaggerated care. "How do they feel, buddy?" David asked, checking the fit with his thumb. "They're perfect." Malik bounced on his toes. "And they make me run faster. I can tell." David laughed. "Is that so? Well, we better get them then. Can't have you slowing down on me." They made their way to the register, where a thin white woman with pinched features stood examining her nails. She straightened up as they approached, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. "Find everything okay?" she asked, her tone professionally distant. "Yes, thank you." David pulled out his wallet and extracted a crisp $100 bill. He'd just gotten it from the bank yesterday, along with several others for various weekend expenses. The cashier took the bill between her thumb and forefinger as if it might bite her. She held it up to the light, turning it this way and that. Her lips pressed into a thin line. David felt a familiar tension creep into his shoulders. He'd seen that look before, the automatic suspicion, the unspoken accusation. Beside him, Malik shifted uncomfortably, picking up on the sudden change in atmosphere. The cashier's eyes flicked between David and the bill. Without a word, she reached under the counter and pressed something. A silent alarm, David realized, his security training kicking in. His heart sank as he saw two uniformed mall security guards changing direction, heading straight for their register. "Is there a problem?" David asked, keeping his voice steady for Malik's sake. But he already knew what was coming. He'd seen it too many times before. The assumption that a black man with a $100 bill must be up to something. Malik pressed closer to his side. "Dad," he whispered, confusion and worry mixing in his voice. "It's okay, son," David said softly, though he could feel his pulse quickening. He placed a protective hand on Malik's shoulder, watching the guards draw nearer. The cashier still hadn't answered his question, just stood there with that tight, suspicious look on her face. Other customers were starting to stare now. A teenage girl pulled out her phone, already recording. David felt Malik trembling slightly under his hand, and a deep anger began to burn in his chest. Not for himself, but for his son having to witness this moment. This casual degradation that no 10-year-old should have to understand. The security guards were only a few steps away now, their faces set in practiced expressions of authority. David drew himself up to his full height, keeping Malik close, and waited for what he knew was coming. The happy Saturday morning shopping trip had vanished, replaced by an all-too-familiar scene that was about to unfold. The glass doors of Athletic World burst open as two police officers strode in, their boots squeaking against the polished floor. The taller one, Sergeant Harlan Briggs, led the way with his hand already on his holster. Behind him, Officer McVeigh's face was a careful blank, his body language tense and ready. "What seems to be the problem here?" Harlan's voice boomed through the store, making other customers jump. His eyes locked onto David immediately. Ignoring the security guards, who had barely opened their mouths to speak, David kept his hand steady on Malik's shoulder. "There's been a misunderstanding about—" "Shut it!" Harlan snapped, closing the distance between them in 3 quick steps. "We got a report of counterfeit bills being passed. Let me see that 100. The cashier wordlessly handed over the bill. Harlan barely glanced at it before shoving it into his pocket. "Yeah, that's fake, all right." "Officer, if you just verify—" David started again, his voice measured despite the anger building in his chest. "Daddy?" Malik's fingers dug into David's hand, his voice trembling. "I said shut it!" Harlan's face reddened. "McVeigh, get the kid out of the way." Officer McVeigh stepped forward, reaching for Malik. David instinctively pulled his son closer, but Harlan was already moving. The sergeant's hands shot out, shoving David backward. Malik's grip was torn away as McVeigh roughly pushed him aside. "Don't touch my son!" David's composed facade cracked, parental instinct overriding his professional training. "Oh, now you're resisting?" Harlan's smile was ugly. He grabbed David's arm, twisting it behind his back with unnecessary force. "Hands behind your back! Big shot!" The cold metal of handcuffs bit into David's wrists. Before he could steady himself, Harlan kicked the back of his knees. David's legs buckled, and he crashed to the floor. The impact drove the air from his lungs as Harlan pressed a knee into his back, grinding his face against the cold tile. "Dad! Stop hurting my dad!" Malik's screams echoed through the store. David tried to turn his head, desperate to see his son, but Harlan's hand pressed harder against his skull. "Teaching your kid the family business, huh?" Harlan sneered, his breath hot against David's ear. "Passing fake bills at the mall? Real Father of the Year material." McVeigh stood back, holding Malik at arm's length while the boy struggled and cried. Around them, a crowd had gathered. The click and whir of phone cameras filled the air. Some shoppers muttered in disapproval, though it wasn't clear toward whom. Others simply turned away, suddenly fascinated by shoe displays. "You're making a mistake," David managed to say, his cheek scraping against the floor. "That bill is legitimate. I'm a federal—" Yeah, you're somebody important, right?" Harlan laughed, pulling David roughly to his feet. "Heard it all before. Save it for the judge." David's shoulders screamed in protest as Harlan yanked upward on the cuffs. He could see Malik's tear-streaked face in the gathering crowd. The sight of his son's terror and confusion cut deeper than any physical pain. "Please," David said, his voice lower now, meant only for the officers. "My son is scared. Let me at least tell him." "Should have thought about your kid before you started running scams." McVeigh spoke up for the first time, his tone flat and dismissive. Harlan started pushing David toward the exit, parading him past shocked onlookers and clicking phones. The mall's bright fluorescent lights created a surreal atmosphere, like a nightmare happening in broad daylight. Every face they passed seemed to blur together, some sympathetic, others judgmental, most just uncomfortable. "Dad! Daddy!" Malik broke free from McVeigh's grip and ran after them. "Where are you taking him? Please don't take my dad." David tried to turn around, to offer some comfort, but Harlan shoved him forward. "Eyes front, tough guy. Keep walking." "It's okay, Malik," David called over his shoulder, fighting to keep his voice steady. "Stay calm, son. Everything's going to be—" "Didn't I tell you to shut up?" Harlan gave the cuffs another twist, making David wince. They pushed through the mall's main doors into the bright morning sunlight. The contrast was jarring. Outside, people were still arriving for a normal Saturday of shopping, unaware of the scene unfolding. A police cruiser sat waiting, its lights flashing silently. Behind them, Malik's desperate cries continued to echo off the mall's glass facade. Each sob felt like a physical blow to David's chest. He could hear McVeigh trying to calm his son down, but the officer's words were drowned out by the sound of car doors opening and the crackle of police radio traffic. "In you go, big man," Harlan said, roughly shoving David's head down and pushing him into the back of the cruiser. "Hope those fancy sneakers were worth it." The door slammed shut, muffling the sounds from outside. Through the window, David could see Malik standing at the mall entrance, his small body shaking with sobs as McVeigh awkwardly patted his shoulder. Shoppers clustered around, phones raised high to capture every moment of the humiliation. As the cruiser pulled away, David caught a final glimpse of his son's devastated face. The image burned itself into his memory, his boy alone and frightened, watching his father being taken away in handcuffs. The morning's joy had shattered into something ugly and all too familiar. Another black child learning too early about the world's cruel realities. The police cruiser's back seat felt like ice against David's gray sweatshirt. His cheek throbbed where it had scraped the mall's floor, and the metal handcuffs dug into his wrists with every bump in the road. But the physical discomfort was nothing compared to the knot in his stomach. His son's terrified screams still echoed in his ears. "Where are you taking my son?" David's voice was steady despite his racing heart. "Who's responsible for him right now?" Harlan's laugh cut through the patrol car. "Now you're worried about the kid? Should have thought about that before trying to pass fake bills." "My son needs to know he's safe," David insisted, leaning forward slightly. "He's only 10. At least tell me who's watching him." McVeigh, driving the cruiser, glanced in the rearview mirror. Mall security will handle it. Maybe they'll call social services. The casual dismissal in McVeigh's tone made David's jaw clench. He could picture Malik alone, surrounded by strangers, probably still crying. The image threatened to crack his composure, but years of training kicked in automatically. Breathe. Focus. Control. The words echoed in his mind, taking him back to his early days of federal training. He could almost hear his instructor's voice. Your emotions are a weapon. Either you control them, or they'll be used against you. Harlan twisted in the passenger seat, his face twisted in a smirk. What's wrong, big shot? Not so tough now, are you? Bet you thought you were real smart, trying to scam honest businesses. David met his gaze steadily, memorizing every detail of Harlan's face. The slight crook in his nose, the small scar above his right eyebrow, the way his upper lip curled when he spoke. Everything about this man would be documented, remembered, recorded. The $100 bill is legitimate, David said calmly. A simple verification would prove that. Sure it is, McVeigh chimed in, his earlier silence forgotten. Just like the last guy's was legitimate. And the one before that. You people always have excuses. You people, David repeated quietly, noting McVeigh's badge number reflected in the rearview mirror. You heard me, McVeigh said, but his voice wavered slightly at David's tone. The cruiser turned onto a side street, and David's training kicked in again. He was mapping their route, noting street names and landmarks. It was automatic now, after years of security work. Always know where you are, always have an exit strategy. But this time, the familiar routine had a different purpose. Every turn, every stop sign, every moment of this journey would be evidence. Think you're something special, don't you? Harlan continued his taunting. Wearing that nice suit, acting all proper. But we know what you are. Just another piece of street trash trying to play businessman. David closed his eyes briefly, remembering another training session. When they show their true faces, his instructor had said, let them. Every word they speak is a rope they're hanging themselves with. The car hit a pothole, making David wince as the cuffs cut deeper. He could feel warm trickles of blood where the metal had broken skin. More evidence, more documentation for later. Nothing to say now? Harlan pressed, clearly annoyed by David's silence. Lost that attitude from the mall real quick, didn't you? I have plenty to say, David replied evenly. I'm just waiting for the right audience. Something in his tone made both officers glance at each other. But before they could respond, the cruiser turned into the police station parking lot. A small crowd of uniformed officers had gathered outside, apparently alerted to their arrival. Look what we caught, boys! Harlan called out as McVeigh parked. Mall rat trying to pass funny money. The waiting officers crowded around the car as McVeigh opened David's door. Rough hands grabbed his arms, pulling him out with unnecessary force. His feet barely touched the ground before they were pushing him forward. Nice suit, one officer sneered. Which store did you steal that from? Probably bought it with more fake bills, another added, drawing laughs from his colleagues. David kept his head high as they marched him toward the station entrance. Each face, each badge number, each name tag, he absorbed them all. The years he'd spent analyzing security threats and identifying patterns now served a different purpose. These men thought they were displaying power, but they were really just documenting their own corruption. Watch your head, Harlan said, then deliberately pushed David into the doorframe. More laughter erupted from the group. Inside, the station buzzed with activity. Desk sergeants looked up from their paperwork. Other officers paused their conversations to stare. David noted how some quickly looked away, uncomfortable with what they were seeing. Those faces were important too, the ones who knew better but chose to stay silent. Got a real smooth operator here, Harlan announced to the room. Think you'll be comfortable in our accommodations, suit man? David remained silent as they pushed him toward processing. His mind was already racing ahead, mapping out what would happen next. They would take his fingerprints, his photo, search his pockets, and then they would find his ID. He almost smiled, thinking about that moment to come. But for now, he let them push and prod, let them think they had power over him, let them dig their hole deeper with every snide comment and rough hand. Because David knew something they didn't. This wasn't just an arrest anymore. This was evidence collection, and he was gathering every bit of it. The holding area reeked of stale sweat and cheap disinfectant. David sat on a hard metal bench, his wrists still raw from the handcuffs they'd finally removed. Around him, officers lounged against walls and desks, their postures relaxed as they traded jokes at his expense. "Did you see how fast he hit the floor?" Harlan laughed, mimicking David's fall at the mall. "All that fancy clothing, face down like common trash." McVeigh joined in, his earlier hesitation forgotten. The kids crying was the best part. Maybe next time Daddy will think twice about passing fake bills. David's fingers curled into fists at the mention of Malik, but he kept his face neutral. The mention of his son sent another wave of worry through him. He still had no idea where Malik was, or who was caring for him. "I need to make my phone call," David said, his voice cutting through their laughter. "It's my right." "Rights!" An officer David hadn't seen before stepped forward, his nameplate reading Peterson. "You got some nerve talking about rights after trying to scam honest businesses." "The law requires you to allow me one phone call," David repeated firmly. Peterson walked over, deliberately dragging his feet. He stopped directly in front of David and spat on his polished shoes. "Oops," he said with a smirk. "Guess I slipped." The other officers roared with laughter. David looked down at the glob of saliva on his leather shoe, then back up at Peterson's face. Another detail for the record, another face to remember. "Real tough guy," Harlan called out. "Bet he won't be talking so proper after a night in the cells." David straightened his back, his voice remaining steady. "Before we continue this entertainment, I'd like my wallet returned." "Oh, you would you?" Harlan mocked, adopting an exaggerated formal tone. "And would sir like his counterfeit money returned as well?" "The wallet," David insisted. "Check it." Something in his tone made McVeigh pause. He glanced at the evidence bag containing David's belongings, then shrugged and picked it up. Might as well see what other fake stuff he's carrying. The officer dumped the contents onto a nearby desk. David's leather wallet landed with a soft thud, spilling open. A small identification card slipped out, landing face up under the harsh fluorescent lights. McVeigh leaned in to read it. His face went slack. "What's wrong?" Peterson asked, still grinning. "Found more funny money?" But McVeigh had stumbled backward, his face draining of color. Harlan stepped forward, snatching up the ID card. His smirk froze, then melted away like ice in summer heat. "Department of Homeland Security," Harlan read aloud, his voice barely a whisper. "Director David Harrington." The room went suddenly, completely silent. The officers who had been lounging against walls straightened up. Those who had been laughing found their shoes intensely interesting. "I believe," David said into the silence, "that phone call is now overdue." Peterson had backed away from David's shoes, looking like he wished the floor would swallow him whole. The glob of spit on David's shoes seemed to glow under the fluorescent lights, a damning piece of evidence that no one could now unsee. "There's been a mistake," McVeigh stammered. We couldn't have known." "Couldn't have known?" David repeated softly. "Couldn't have known what, Officer McVeigh? That I was telling the truth? That the bill was real? That I was exactly who I said I was?" Harlan's face had turned an interesting shade of gray. I'll get the chief," he muttered. practically running from the room. The remaining officers stood frozen, like children caught misbehaving. David remained seated, his posture relaxed, but his eyes sharp, noting every nervous twitch and panicked glance. Within minutes, heavy footsteps announced new arrivals. Chief Raymond Doyle burst into the room, his face flushed and his tie askew. Behind him, Harlan hovered like a nervous shadow. "Director Harrington," Doyle said, his voice dripping with forced warmth, "this is clearly a terrible misunderstanding." "Is it?" David asked quietly. Of course, Doyle continued, shooting warning glances at his officers. "A simple mistake that we'll clear up immediately." "Officers," he barked, "release the director's belongings, now!" McVeigh scrambled to gather David's things, nearly dropping them in his haste. His hands shook as he handed over the wallet, phone, and keys. "And my son?" David asked, his voice like steel. Yes, of course," Doyle stammered. "He's in my office, perfectly safe. Been watching cartoons on the computer." "Officers," he added sharply, "go get the boy." Two officers practically tripped over each other, rushing to obey. The room remained tense, filled with the sound of nervous breathing and shuffling feet. "Director," Doyle tried again, "on behalf of the department, I want to extend our sincerest apologies. This was all a terrible misunderstanding, a regrettable error in judgment." David stood slowly, straightening his suit jacket. Every officer in the room took an involuntary step back. "A misunderstanding," he repeated, letting each syllable hang in the air. Before Doyle could respond, running footsteps announced Malik's arrival. The boy burst into the room, tears streaming down his face. "Dad!" David caught his son in his arms, holding him close. He could feel Malik's small body shaking with sobs. Over his son's head, David's eyes met Doyle's, and the police chief flinched at what he saw there. "We'll just process your release papers," Doyle said quickly. "A simple formality. And then you can be on your way." David's hand gently stroked Malik's back, soothing his son's tears, but his eyes never left the chief's face. The fury in them burned like a contained inferno, promising consequences that made every officer in the room want to disappear. The kitchen felt too quiet as David stirred a pot of mac and cheese, Malik's favorite comfort food. Steam rose from the pasta, but the familiar, homey smell couldn't mask the tension hanging in the air. Malik sat at the table, legs dangling from his chair, pushing the food around his plate without eating. "You need to eat something, son," David said gently, settling into his own chair. His body still ached from being thrown to the ground, but he kept the pain from his voice. Malik's fork clinked against the plate. "They hurt you," he whispered, his eyes fixed downward. "They hurt you, and I couldn't do anything." David's heart clenched. He reached across the table, covering Malik's small hand with his own. "None of that was your fault. You hear me? None of it. But why did they do it?" Malik's voice cracked. "We didn't do anything wrong." Before David could answer, his phone buzzed again, the 20th time in the past hour. He'd been ignoring the notifications, trying to focus on his son, but now he glanced at the screen. His stomach tightened. The video was everywhere. Someone had captured the entire incident at the mall, from the moment the officers approached to his face being pressed into the floor. The footage was grainy, but clear enough. His son's screams pierced through the background noise. David scrolled through the responses, his jaw clenching tighter with each comment. Another entitled thug getting what he deserves. Should have complied if he didn't want trouble. These people always play the victim. But there were other voices too. "This is disgusting! They didn't even check the bill! Look how they treated him in front of his kid! Racist cops at it again! This has to stop!" His phone buzzed with a news alert. The local station was running the story, but something was wrong. The anchor's voice filled the kitchen. The police union has released a statement regarding today's incident at Eastbrook Mall. According to officials, the suspect, now identified as Department of Homeland Security Director David Harrington, displayed aggressive behavior and actively resisted arrest. Officers reported feeling threatened. David's fork clattered against his plate. Malik flinched at the sound. "I'm sorry," David said quickly, softening his voice. "It's okay, son. Just some people telling stories that aren't true." "I saw what happened," Malik said, his voice stronger now. "They're lying." David studied his son's face. So young, yet already learning such harsh lessons. He wanted to shield Malik from this ugliness, but the world wouldn't let him. The TV in the living room, which they'd left on for background noise, switched to breaking news. A different reporter appeared, standing outside the police station. Sources within the department described Director Harrington as hostile and uncooperative. The police union stands by their officers' actions, stating proper protocols were followed. More lies. David's phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Messages from colleagues, friends, reporters, all wanting statements, explanations, his side of the story. But how could he explain something so fundamentally wrong? "Dad!" Malik's voice pulled him back. "Are you in trouble?" David reached across the table again, squeezing his son's hand. "No, son. They're the ones in trouble. They just don't know it yet." Malik nodded, taking a small bite of mac and cheese. David tried to smile encouragingly, but his mind raced. The police were spinning their narrative, trying to control the story. They'd rather paint him as the aggressor than admit their officers acted on pure prejudice. Hours passed. David managed to get some food into Malik, then settled him on the living room couch with a movie. But Malik's eyes kept drifting to the news coverage, his small face troubled every time they showed clips from the mall. Eventually, exhaustion won out. Malik fell asleep on the couch, curled up small like he used to do when he was younger. David draped a blanket over him, brushing a gentle hand over his son's head. The TV continued its relentless coverage. Now they had experts analyzing the video, frame by frame, trying to justify the officers' actions. One commentator suggested David must have done something to provoke them, even if it wasn't caught on camera. Another buzz from his phone, a text from his mother. "Baby, are you and Malik okay? These people on TV are trying to make you look bad." David's fingers tightened around the phone. The lies weren't just about him anymore. They were attacking every parent who'd ever had to teach their child about dealing with police. Every person who'd been wrongly accused, roughly handled, or worse. All because of the color of their skin. He looked at Malik, sleeping peacefully, then back at the TV where his own face was plastered across the screen. The caption below read, "Questions arise about Homeland Security Director's conduct during arrest." David's jaw tightened as he watched another expert question his character, his professionalism, his right to be treated with basic human dignity. These weren't just attacks on his reputation. They were attacks on every child who might grow up thinking this treatment was normal. Every parent who had to have the talk with their kids about staying alive during police encounters. "They're not just attacking me," he whispered, watching his son's chest rise and fall with each peaceful breath. "They're attacking all of us." Morning sunlight streamed through David's home office window as he dialed a familiar number. His fingers drummed steadily on his desk while he waited, each ring amplifying his determination. "Secret Service, Financial Crimes Division," a crisp voice answered. "This is Director Harrington. I need to speak with Agent Morales." A brief pause. "One moment, sir." David glanced at the clock. 6:45 a.m. Early, but not too early for Elena Morales. She'd been his go-to contact in the Treasury Department for years, known for her methodical attention to detail and unwavering integrity. "Director Harrington," Morales's voice came through clearly. I saw the video. Are you okay? I'm fine, Elena. But I need your help. That $100 bill they claimed was counterfeit. Can you trace it? Already on it, sir. I pulled the serial number from your bank's withdrawal records yesterday. Give me a minute. He heard keys clicking rapidly. Here it is. Series 2017, printed in Fort Worth. The bill is absolutely legitimate, with all security features intact. It was issued to your bank 3 weeks ago. David leaned forward. I need that in writing, Elena. Official Treasury documentation. Sending it now. But sir? She hesitated. This isn't the first time we've seen this pattern. What pattern? False counterfeit claims at retail locations. We've noticed a disturbing trend. They're disproportionately used to target black shoppers. Some stores even have unofficial policies about extra scrutiny for large bills from certain customers. David's jaw tightened. Send me everything you have on similar incidents in this area. Will do. And sir, watch your back. These local departments don't like federal oversight. After hanging up, David logged into his secure federal system. His security clearance gave him access to a network of surveillance resources, traffic cameras, security feeds, license plate readers. He started with the mall's external cameras, rewinding to yesterday morning. The footage showed his car pulling into the parking lot at 10:17 a.m. But something caught his eye. A patrol car circling the lot just minutes before. He switched angles, zooming in on the vehicle's number. It matched one of the cars that responded to his arrest. So you were already there, David muttered, typing rapidly. He accessed the mall's internal security network next. The feeds showed him and Malik walking through the main entrance, heading toward the shoe store. But in the background, a uniformed officer spoke into his radio, then began following at a distance. David's blood ran cold as he watched. They'd been tailing him before he even reached the store, before any mention of counterfeit money, before he'd done anything except walk through the mall with his son. More footage revealed the full picture. The officer who followed them radioed for backup. 2 more cops entered through different doors, positioning themselves strategically. They were setting up containment points, using standard police tactics for cornering a suspect. All this, David whispered, before I even pulled out my wallet. He kept digging, pulling cell tower data that showed the officers' phone locations. They'd coordinated their movements, converging on the store just as David approached the register. This wasn't a response to a cashier's concern. It was a planned operation. His computer pinged with an email from Morales. She'd sent Treasury reports documenting similar incidents across the city. A black doctor accused of passing fake bills at a high-end restaurant. A college professor detained while buying textbooks. A grandmother arrested in front of her grandchildren for using a $100 bill at a grocery store. All the bills had been real. All the charges were dropped. All the victims were black. David opened another window, accessing police department records through his federal clearance. He found the officer's body cam footage from yesterday, but it started only after they entered the store. The earlier footage, when they were following him, had been conveniently deleted. Sloppy, he muttered. You didn't count on Homeland security protocols. Federal systems kept backup copies of all deleted law enforcement data. Within minutes, he recovered the missing footage. The officer's conversations were clearly audible. Target entering east entrance with juvenile. Copy that. Moving to position. Let's see what this one's carrying. David's hands clenched into fists. They hadn't even bothered to mask their intentions. His phone buzzed. Another email from Morales. She'd cross-referenced the officers' names with Treasury investigations. 2 of them had been involved in multiple counterfeit accusations, all dismissed, all targeting black shoppers. It was a pattern, a tactic, a weapon used to harass and humiliate. The evidence built steadily. Surveillance photos, radio transcripts, deleted footage, Treasury reports. David created secure backups of everything, storing them on encrypted federal servers where local police couldn't reach them. He pulled up the viral video of his arrest one more time. Now he saw it differently. Not just an incident of prejudice, but a calculated operation. They'd planned it, coordinated it, executed it with practiced efficiency. How many others had they done this to? How many lives had they damaged? Malik's voice drifted up from downstairs, talking to his grandmother, who'd come over to help. The sound reminded David what was at stake. Not just justice for himself, but protection for his son. For everyone's sons and daughters. He looked at his screen, at the mountain of evidence he'd gathered. The corrupt officers thought they'd picked an easy target, someone they could bully and dismiss. Instead, they'd chosen the one man with the clearance, resources, and determination to expose their whole operation. David leaned back in his chair, his voice barely a whisper. "You picked the wrong man." The parking garage echoed with David's footsteps as he walked toward his car. His meeting with Sarah Chen, his attorney, had run late into the evening. The fluorescent lights cast harsh shadows between the concrete pillars, creating dark pockets throughout the structure. David's phone vibrated, a text from his mother. Malik finished his homework. "He's asking when you'll be home." A small smile crossed his face as he typed back, "Tell him 30 minutes. Love you both." The sound of footsteps, multiple sets, made him pause. His federal training kicked in automatically. 4 men emerged from behind parked cars, spreading out to block his path. They wore civilian clothes, but David recognized their stance, their movements. Off-duty cops. "Going somewhere, Director?" One of them stepped forward, a stocky man with a crew cut. His breath reeked of cheap whiskey. David maintained his calm, keeping his hands visible but ready. "You gentlemen need something?" Another man, tall and lean, moved to David's left. "Yeah, we need you to drop this lawsuit nonsense. Stop making trouble." "Making trouble?" David's voice stayed level, but his eyes hardened. "Like following me into a parking garage? 4 against 1? "Just having a friendly chat," the stocky one said, pulling something from his jacket. A collapsible baton. It snapped open with a metallic click. "About how things work in this city." David noticed their positions. Standard intimidation formation. The stocky one in front, the others moving to flank. Amateur work compared to his training, but dangerous in close quarters. "Last chance," the tall one growled. "Drop the lawsuit, or things get ugly." David shifted his weight slightly, centering his balance. "You boys really should have done your homework." The stocky one lunged forward, swinging the baton at David's ribs. But David was already moving. He stepped inside the swing, grabbed the man's wrist, and twisted. The baton clattered to the ground. In the same fluid motion, David drove his elbow up into the man's jaw. The tall one came in from the left, throwing a wild punch. David blocked it with his forearm, then swept the man's legs. As he fell, David grabbed his collar and used the momentum to throw him face first into a nearby car hood. The impact dented the metal. The third attacker had a knife. David saw the blade glint under the fluorescent lights. He was better trained than the others, moving with purpose. He slashed in controlled arcs, forcing David back toward the fourth man. David recognized the tactic, heard the target into an ambush. But he'd taught this technique to special forces. The knife wielder slashed again, and David retreated exactly as they wanted. The fourth man moved in from behind, thinking he had an opening. That's when David struck. He dropped suddenly, spinning low. His leg swept the fourth man's feet just as he was stepping forward. The man fell hard, his head cracking against the concrete. David rolled backward, came up behind the knife wielder, and locked him in a chokehold. The man struggled, trying to stab backward, but David controlled his knife hand easily. He squeezed the pressure points in the man's wrist until the blade fell. Then he increased pressure on the carotid artery. Not enough to cause permanent damage, but enough to send a message. The stocky one was stumbling to his feet, blood streaming from his split lip. David released the knife wielder with a shove, sending him sprawling into his friend. They collapsed in a heap. The tall one was still bent over the car hood, groaning. David grabbed his collar again, this time pulling him up to eye level. "Listen carefully." David's voice was cold and precise. "I've got your faces on camera." He nodded toward the security cameras in the garage corners. "I've got your prints on that knife, and now I've got evidence of assault on a federal officer." He released the tall one, who slumped to his knees. The others were crawling backward, trying to get away from him. "Next time," David said softly, "I won't let you walk away." The stocky one spat blood, trying to maintain some dignity. "You think you're untouchable? We've got friends." "No," David cut him off. "You've got corrupted badges and inflated egos. I've got federal jurisdiction, tactical training, and enough evidence to bury you all." He stepped closer, his shadow falling over them. "Run back to whoever sent you. Tell them what happened here. And remind them, I'm not some rookie you can intimidate. I'm the man who trains the people you should fear." They scrambled to their feet, supporting each other as they limped away. The knife lay forgotten on the ground. David picked it up carefully by the handle, preserving the prints. It would make an interesting addition to his evidence file. His phone vibrated again. Another text from his mother. "Malik wants to wait up for you." David typed back, "On my way. Had to take care of something." He slipped the knife into an evidence bag from his briefcase, then took photos of the dented car hood and the blood drops on the concrete. The parking garage was quiet again, but David knew this was just the beginning. They'd escalate after this, try something more direct. He'd have to be ready, have to protect Malik. But for now, he'd won this round. Not just with physical skill, but with the one thing corrupt cops feared most: evidence. David's shoes clicked against the polished floor of the Homeland Security headquarters. The usual morning buzz of activity felt different, strained. Heads turned away as he passed. Conversations died mid-sentence. These were people he'd worked with for years, people who used to greet him with warm smiles. At his office door, he paused. Someone had left today's newspaper on his desk, folded to show an opinion piece. Law enforcement under attack. When federal officials abuse their power. His jaw tightened as he scanned the article. More lies, more twisting of the truth. "Rough morning?" Deputy Carter stood in the doorway, his face a mask of practiced concern. He closed the door behind him, speaking in low tones. "The press is having a field day with this, David." David sat at his desk, studying his deputy's expression. Thomas Carter had been his right hand for 3 years, always dependable, always practical. Now something felt off about his concerned stance. "They can write what they want," David said, keeping his voice neutral. "The truth will come out." Carter leaned forward, hands gripping the back of a chair. "Look, I'm saying this as a friend. Drop it. You're making powerful enemies. The police union, the DA's office, they've got friends in Congress, friends who control our budget. So I should just let them get away with it?" David's voice had an edge now. "Let them keep targeting people who look like me, like my son. I'm thinking about your career, David, about your future." Carter's tie was slightly crooked, David noticed. Unusual for him. "You've worked too hard to throw it all away on this crusade." "Crusade?" David stood slowly. "They assaulted me in front of my child, used a fake accusation to justify it, and now they're trying to cover it up. That's not a crusade, Thomas. That's corruption." Carter spread his hands in a placating gesture. "All I'm saying is, pick your battles. Maybe it's time to let this one go. You know me better than that." "Yeah," Carter sighed, heading for the door. "I do. That's what worries me." The day dragged on. David noticed more subtle changes. Meetings rescheduled without notice, emails left unanswered. By late afternoon, his phone buzzed with an alert from a trusted contact in IT. "Check your inbox," the message read. "Someone's been forwarding your internal communications." David's fingers flew over the keyboard, pulling up access logs. There it was, dozens of emails sent to external accounts, all through one user ID. His stomach tightened as he saw the name, Thomas Carter. A new email popped up from an anonymous account. The subject line made his blood run cold. "Your son looks just like you." David opened it with trembling fingers. Inside was a photo of Malik walking to school that morning, time-stamped just hours ago. Below it, text in bold, "Back off or the boy pays." His phone rang. His mother. "David, someone left an envelope at the house. No return address." Her voice shook slightly. It's pictures of Malik and threats." David's training kicked in, pushing down the rage and fear. "Don't touch anything else in the envelope. I'm sending a security team. Pack a bag for you and Malik. You're staying at a safe house tonight." He hung up and made the calls, setting protection in motion. Then he pulled up the building's security cameras, watching Carter leave for the day. His deputy walked to his car, made a call, and smiled. Not the worried expression he'd worn earlier, but a satisfied smirk. David's computer pinged. Another alert from IT. An internal memo was being circulated through back channels, questioning his mental stability and fitness for duty. The metadata showed it originated from Carter's computer. The betrayal stung, but it made sense now. Carter was always political, always seeking advantage. He'd chosen his side, aligned himself with the forces trying to bury this incident. Hours later, David stood in Malik's bedroom doorway at the safe house. His son clutched his favorite teddy bear, the last gift from his mother before she passed. Even in sleep, Malik's face showed tension, his small body curled protectively around the bear. Through the bulletproof window, David watched a dark sedan idle across the street. It had followed them from his mother's house, keeping just far enough back to claim coincidence. Amateur surveillance, meant to be noticed, meant to intimidate. His phone vibrated. Another anonymous email. "Even safe houses have windows." David's hand tightened on the phone. They were escalating, moving from simple intimidation to direct threats. Using his son as leverage. The old David might have backed down, might have chosen peace over justice, but they'd crossed a line. Threatening Malik changed everything. He looked at his sleeping son again, remembering the terror in those young eyes during the arrest, remembering how Malik used to trust authority, used to believe in fairness. They'd stolen that innocence from him. The sedan's engine rumbled outside, a low threat in the quiet night. David checked the security system's feeds, armed guards at every entrance, motion sensors active, panic buttons ready. They were safe for now, but he knew this was just the beginning. His phone buzzed again. "Carter, think about what you're risking. It's not too late to be reasonable." David didn't reply. Instead, he opened his laptop, pulling up the evidence he'd gathered. The real money, the surveillance footage, the arrest video, and now Carter's leaked emails and the death threats. A pattern emerging, connecting the corruption from street level all the way up through the department. They thought threatening his son would make him back down. Instead, they'd just given him one more reason to tear their whole system apart. Malik's scream shattered the midnight silence. David bolted upright, muscle memory from years of training already in motion. The sound of splintering wood echoed through the house as black-clad figures poured through multiple entry points. "Police! Get down! Get down now!" David's hand slammed the panic button by his bed, triggering the house's defense protocols. Steel shutters crashed down over windows. Emergency lights flooded every room with blinding white. The home security system's voice rang out. Alert! Unauthorized entry. Police notified. Recording activated. Daddy! Malik's voice cracked with terror. David burst into the hallway wearing only sweatpants. 2 SWAT officers swung their rifles toward him. On the ground! One bellowed. Instead of complying, David raised his hands slowly. I'm David Harrington, Director of Homeland Security. You're in a federally protected residence. Stand down immediately. More officers pushed in behind the first 2. David counted 8, all heavily armed. Their body language screamed aggression. This wasn't a legitimate raid. We have a warrant, an officer thrust a paper forward, for evidence tampering and obstruction. Daddy, help! Malik's voice came from his bedroom. David's heart pounded, but his voice remained steady. That's my 10-year-old son. If anyone touches him, you'll face federal charges. An officer moved toward Malik's room. David stepped forward, causing several rifles to track his movement. I'm reaching for my phone, he said clearly. Calling this in to the FBI right now. Drop the phone! An officer lunged, trying to knock it away. David's training took over. He blocked the grab, twisted, and used the officer's momentum to throw him into his partner. Both stumbled, creating space. David backed toward Malik's room. Son! He called out. Remember the drill we practiced? Red button under your bed. A small click, then more security shutters slammed down. Malik's room was now sealed. Reinforced steel protecting his son from intruders. Breach the door! Someone shouted. That's a panic room rated for explosive devices, David said calmly. You try breaching it. The FBI gets an automatic alert. The House speakers crackled. Attention! Federal Protective Service, en route. ETA 3 minutes. An officer grabbed David's arm. Without hesitation, David executed a perfect disarm technique, breaking the grip, securing the man's wrist, and using pressure points to drop him to his knees. The officer's rifle clattered to the floor. Listen carefully, David addressed the team. You've invaded a federal security director's home without proper authorization. Every second is being recorded. Your badge numbers are logged. Back out now, or face federal prosecution. We have a warrant, the team leader insisted, but his voice wavered. A local warrant doesn't override federal jurisdiction. David kicked the fallen rifle away. And I'm betting that warrant won't hold up to scrutiny. His phone buzzed. Speaker, David commanded. His attorney's voice filled the room. David, I've got emergency injunctions from 3 federal judges. SWAT needs to withdraw immediately or face contempt charges. The team leader's radio crackled. David caught fragments. Abort mission. D.A. Denton says pull back. Clear out, now! The leader waved his team back. David stood his ground as they retreated, keeping himself between them and Malik's room. Only when the last officer disappeared did he key in the code to lower the shutters. Malik, it's safe now, son. Coming in. David entered the panic room slowly. His son huddled in the corner, tears streaming down his face. The room was spare, just a cot, water, and emergency supplies. Malik launched himself into David's arms. I was so scared, Malik sobbed. They had guns like in the video games. David held him tight, feeling his son's heart racing. I know, buddy, but you did exactly right. You remembered our safety plan. Looking around his son's regular bedroom, David's jaw clenched. The SWAT team had ransacked everything. Malik's drawings were torn from walls. His model airplanes lay shattered. Even his teddy bear had been slashed open, stuffing spilled across the floor. They broke all my things, Malik whispered. Dad, why do they hate us? The question hit David like a physical blow. How could he explain systemic racism to a 10-year-old? How could he make sense of this violation? "They don't hate us, son," David said carefully. "They're afraid." Afraid of what? Afraid of people who stand up to them. Afraid of the truth. David brushed tears from his son's cheeks. "But we're not going to let fear win. Remember what Mom always said?" Malik nodded slowly. "Being brave doesn't mean not being scared. It means doing what's right, even when you are scared." "That's right." David surveyed the destruction. Glass crunched under his feet. Pictures hung crooked on walls. The house he'd made into a sanctuary lay violated. Malik picked up his ruined teddy bear, trying to stuff the filling back inside. "Can we fix him?" "We'll fix everything, son." David pulled Malik close. "I promise." Red and blue lights still flashed outside. David could hear his attorney arguing with officers on the lawn. Soon there would be statements to make, evidence to document, more battles to fight. But for now, he just held his son, both of them shaken but alive, surrounded by the wreckage of their home. The morning after the raid, David sat at his kitchen table surrounded by broken glass and overturned furniture. His fingers traced the rim of a cold coffee mug while Malik slept upstairs, finally exhausted from the night's terror. A knock at the door made him tense. Through the security camera, he saw a young black woman holding up press credentials. "Mr. Harrington?" she called out. "I'm Nia Reynolds, investigative reporter. I need 5 minutes." David almost ignored her, but something in her stance caught his attention. The way she positioned herself away from windows, checking sight lines. She knew tradecraft. He opened the door cautiously. "If you're here for a quote about last night..." "I'm here because I know who ordered that raid," Nia cut in, her voice low. "And it goes deeper than racist cops. May I come in?" David studied her for a moment, then stepped aside. Nia entered, surveying the damage with sharp eyes. "They didn't find what they wanted," she said. "It wasn't a question." "And what's that?" "The evidence you've been gathering about the pattern of false arrests targeting black shoppers." Nia pulled out her phone, showing him a spreadsheet. "I've been tracking similar incidents for months. The counterfeit money accusation is their favorite excuse." David's training kicked in. He checked for recording devices, looked for signs she was wearing a wire. Nia noticed and smiled. "Clean," she said. "And I swept for bugs before knocking. Old habit from protecting sources." "Who are your sources?" Someone inside the DA's office grew a conscience. Nia sat down, uninvited. "They reached out after your arrest went viral. Said Denton, the DA, has been pressuring police to boost arrest numbers, specifically targeting black men." David leaned against the wall, arms crossed. "Why?" "Private prison contracts." Nia pulled out more documents. "The county gets kickbacks for every inmate. Higher numbers mean bigger profits. But here's where it gets interesting. The DA and police chief both sit on boards of companies that service those prisons. Food vendors, maintenance contracts, surveillance systems. Making money on both ends," David muttered. "Exactly. Your arrest was business as usual, until they realized who you were." Nia's eyes flashed. "Now they're terrified you'll expose everything." David walked to his study, returning with his own files. Traffic cam footage showing officers following me before the arrest. Mall security feeds. Treasury verification. The bill was real. "Good start." Nia nodded. "But we need more. My source says there are internal memos directing officers to target specific demographics. Quotas for arrests, financial records showing the kickback structure." For the first time since the mall, David felt a spark of hope. "Your source can get these." "Some. The rest." Nia gave him a meaningful look. "Might require someone with federal clearance looking in the right places." David understood. His Homeland Security access could uncover what local corruption had buried. "Why help me?" he asked. "This could destroy your career too." Because I watched my brother get arrested on the same fake charges 5 years ago, Nia said quietly. He's still in prison. And because someone needs to stop them. David thought of Malik upstairs, how close he'd come to being another statistic. If we do this, we need overwhelming evidence. They'll try to discredit everything. Already ahead of you. Nia opened her laptop. I've been building a secure database, encrypted, backed up on servers they can't touch. We document everything, every interview, every paper trail, every connection. They worked through the morning, piecing together the conspiracy. Nia's journalism skills complemented David's investigative training. She knew which threads to pull, which pressure points to target. He knew how to access sealed records, track financial movements, connect seemingly unrelated dots. By afternoon, patterns emerged. The same officers made the same types of arrests. The same judges approved the same warrants. Money flowed through shell companies back to key officials. Look at this, Nia pointed to her screen. Arrest rates jumped 300% after the private prison contract was signed. Almost all black men, most first-time offenders, most on questionable charges. And every case processed through Denton's office, David added. Fast-tracked to guilty pleas. Because public defenders are overwhelmed, pushing plea deals to clear cases. Nia's fingers flew across the keyboard. Meanwhile, the prison population grows, and the profits roll in. David felt energy he hadn't had in days. This was bigger than his own arrest. It was systematic exploitation of an entire community, and they could prove it. We need 2 more weeks, he said. Get your sources' documents, cross-reference everything. Build an airtight case. Then we go public? Nia asked. All at once. Every news outlet, every oversight committee, every federal prosecutor. David's eyes hardened. No warning, no chance for them to spin it. They'll try to stop us, Nia warned. Let them try. David thought of Malik's tears, of his ransacked home. We've got truth on our side. But even as hope surged, David knew the enemy's reach. That night, he secured multiple copies of their evidence, hiding them in separate locations. He updated his will, arranged emergency protocols for Malik's safety. The next morning, he walked into his Homeland Security office feeling stronger than he had in days. The case was building. Justice seemed possible. Then he saw the internal affairs agents waiting in his office. Behind them, technicians were already boxing up his files and computers. Director Harrington, one agent said, holding up a document, you're suspended pending ethics review. Please surrender your credentials and leave the premises. David watched helplessly as they carried out box after box of evidence. His phone buzzed, Nia warning that her office had been raided too. All copies seized. In moments, weeks of work vanished. His career, built over decades of service, lay in ruins. The agents escorted him out past shocked colleagues. His badge and gun surrendered. David stood in the parking lot, everything they'd built crumbling around him. David sat motionless in his leather armchair, staring at nothing in the darkness of his living room. The only light came from distant street lamps filtering through the curtains. His phone lay silent on the coffee table. No calls, no messages, no hope. Everything he'd built over 20 years of service, gone in a single morning. The soft padding of small feet made him turn. Malik stood in the doorway in his Spider-Man pajamas, clutching his stuffed bear. Dad? Malik's voice wavered. Why are you sitting in the dark? David tried to smile but couldn't quite manage it. Just thinking, buddy. You should be in bed. Instead of leaving, Malik crossed the room and climbed into his father's lap, something he hadn't done in months. He seemed so small, yet his presence filled the empty space around them. Is it because of the bad people? Malik asked quietly. The ones who took your job? David's throat tightened. How could he explain to a 10-year-old that the system meant to protect them was rigged against them? That fighting for justice could cost you everything? Sometimes, David began carefully, doing the right thing is hard. Really hard. Like when you stood up to those cops? Malik's hand found David's in the darkness. Even though they were mean? Yeah, like that. Malik was quiet for a moment, thinking. Then he squeezed his father's hand. Remember what you told me when Tommy kept stealing my lunch money? David closed his eyes, remembering that conversation from months ago. What did I tell you? You said never bow to bullies. Malik's voice grew stronger. You said if we let them win, they'll never stop. And he hesitated, then continued with fierce determination. You said we Harringtons don't quit. Something stirred in David's chest, a warmth pushing back against the cold despair. He looked down at his son's face, seeing not just innocent trust, but real understanding. When did you get so wise? David asked softly. I learned from you, Dad. Malik hugged him tight. Don't stop fighting. Please? David held his son close, feeling strength return to his tired body. Malik was right. Giving up now would teach him the wrong lesson, would let the bullies win. I won't stop, David whispered. I promise. After tucking Malik back into bed, David retrieved his phone. His hands shook slightly as he dialed Nia's number, praying she'd answer despite the late hour. 3 rings, then her voice. I was wondering when you'd call. They took everything, David said, the words bitter in his mouth. Every file, every document? Not everything. Nia's tone shifted, becoming almost smug. Remember when I mentioned backing up files on servers they couldn't touch? David straightened. You mean, I've been doing this too long to keep all my eggs in one basket, Nia said. Every piece of evidence we gathered is safely stored on encrypted drives in 3 different locations. They seized empty copies. Relief flooded through David. You're brilliant. That's not all, Nia continued. After they raided my office, I got calls from 4 different Secret Service agents. Seems you've got some loyal friends in federal service. Morales, David breathed. Agent Elena Morales had been his right hand for years. She and others have been quietly documenting everything since your arrest, building their own case file. They've got surveillance recordings, internal communications, financial transfers, stuff we couldn't even access. David began pacing, energy coursing through him. How soon can we meet? Dawn, Nia said. I'm texting you an address. Come alone, no phones. We'll consolidate everything we have and plan our next move. They'll be watching me, David warned. Already handled. Morales arranged a diversion. Trust me. After hanging up, David went to check on Malik again. His son slept peacefully, clutching his bear. Looking at him, David felt the weight of responsibility, not just as a father, but as someone who could actually change things. He thought of other fathers, other sons, trapped in a system designed to profit from their suffering. Of all the lives ruined by false arrests and forced plea deals. Of the corrupt officials getting rich off human misery. In the quiet darkness of Malik's room, David made a new vow. This wasn't just about clearing his name anymore. It was about dismantling a machine built on racism and greed. About making sure no other child would watch their father being humiliated on a mall floor. His phone buzzed with Nia's text, an address in an industrial area across town. David memorized it, then deleted the message. He began mental preparations for tomorrow. Routes to avoid surveillance, contingency plans, security protocols. This was what he'd trained for all those years. Not just the physical skills or tactical knowledge, but the strategic thinking, the ability to turn seeming defeat into advantage. He touched the empty spot on his belt where his badge had been. They thought taking his credentials would break him. Instead, it had freed him to fight without constraints. David returned to his study, reviewing the house's security system one last time. He'd need to leave before sunrise. set things in motion. Agent Morales would ensure Malik got safely to school. Standing at his window, David watched a police cruiser roll past. Their not-so-subtle surveillance. Let them watch. Let them think they'd won. His son's words echoed in his mind. Never bow to bullies. David's jaw set with determination. "We finish this," he whispered into the darkness. Once and for all. The abandoned auto repair shop looked deserted from the outside, its windows covered in years of grime. David parked 3 blocks away, taking a circuitous route to the back entrance. His shoes crunched on broken glass as he approached. 3 quick knocks. Pause. 2 more. The heavy steel door creaked open. "You weren't followed?" Nia asked, ushering him inside. "Clean," David confirmed. "Your diversion worked." The interior had been transformed into a makeshift command center. Folding tables held laptops and document boxes. Agent Elena Morales stood beside a whiteboard covered in flowcharts, her normally pristine Secret Service suit wrinkled from an all-night session. "Director," she nodded formally, then softened. "David. Good to see you standing tall." 2 other agents David recognized worked at computers, Martinez and Chen, both veterans he'd trusted for years. They'd risked their careers coming here. "What do we have?" David asked, studying the whiteboard. Nia spread files across the central table. "Start with these financial records. The money trail is like a spider web, but it all leads back to 2 names. Police Chief Raymond Doyle," Morales pointed to one document, "and District Attorney Phillips. They've been running this scheme for at least 8 years. David leaned in, scanning bank statements and contract papers. His jaw tightened as the pattern emerged. "Private prison kickbacks," he muttered. "Disguised as consulting fees?" "Brilliant in its simplicity," Nia explained. "The police department has arrest quotas. Unofficial, of course. Officers get bonuses for hitting targets. The DA's office fast-tracks plea deals, threatening maximum sentences to force quick, guilty pleas." Martinez pulled up a spreadsheet. "Every conviction feeds bodies into private prisons. The corporations pay kickbacks to the chief and DA, who spread enough around to keep everyone quiet. But the racial targeting?" David's voice hardened. "By design." Chen projected a map onto the wall. Red dots clustered in predominantly black neighborhoods. Analysis of arrest records shows clear patterns. Black men aged 18-45 are 7 times more likely to be stopped. Bogus charges like your counterfeit money accusation are standard practice. David studied the map, bile rising in his throat. Each dot represented a life disrupted, a family traumatized. "The numbers are staggering," Morales added. "Over 5,000 questionable arrests in the past 3 years alone. Average plea deal acceptance rate of 92%. The private prison population has tripled." "And the profits?" David asked. Nia handed him another document. Chief Doyle's offshore accounts show deposits totaling $12 million since 2015. The DA's taken in almost $9 million. "Blood money," David growled. "Built on destroying black lives." He moved to the whiteboard, tracing connections between names and shell companies. The scope of the corruption was breathtaking. Judges who rubber-stamped warrants, prison officials who looked the other way. Politicians bought with campaign contributions. "This isn't just a few bad cops," David said. "It's an enterprise. They've turned racism into a business model. And they've gotten sloppy," Morales added. "Your arrest scared them. They're making mistakes, trying to cover their tracks." David nodded grimly. "That's why they raided my office. Why they're so desperate to discredit me." "You're a threat to their whole operation," Nia said. "A high-ranking federal official who can expose everything. They can't buy you off or intimidate you. So they tried to destroy me instead." David's voice was cold. "My career, my reputation, my son's sense of safety." all collateral damage to protect their profit machine. He studied the evidence spread across the tables. Years of his life had been devoted to protecting the homeland from threats. Now he saw the threat wasn't just external terrorism or foreign adversaries. It was right here, wearing badges and business suits, destroying communities from within. "We have enough to take them down," Morales said. "Multiple federal violations, RICO statutes, civil rights crimes, the evidence is ironclad. But we have to move fast," Nia warned, "before they can destroy more records or silence witnesses." David straightened, authority returning to his bearing. The others unconsciously shifted, responding to the natural leadership they'd followed for years. "We hit them from multiple angles," he said. "Legal, media, financial. No warning, no chance to react." He began outlining positions on the whiteboard, tactical planning taking over. "Martinez, freeze their accounts. Chen, coordinate with Treasury to trace every dollar. Morales, get arrest warrants ready for the entire leadership chain." They nodded, energy building in the room. "Nia, we'll need maximum media exposure. Time it with the arrests. Show the public everything. The racism, the quotas, the profit machine. Make it impossible to ignore or spin." "Already have 3 major outlets ready to run the story," she confirmed. "Plus, social media influencers to amplify." David surveyed his team, federal agents and a fearless journalist, united against corruption. Despite everything taken from him, he felt stronger than ever. "They thought destroying my career would silence me," he said quietly. "Instead, they freed me to fight without restraint. No more bureaucracy. No more political considerations." He turned to face them fully, voice ringing with authority. "This ends now. We take the fight to them. Not just for me or my son, but for every family they've terrorized. Every life they've ruined for profit. We shut down their whole corrupt machine." The others straightened, resolve hardening on their faces. They'd seen too much injustice, watched too many crimes go unpunished. "We take the fight to them," they echoed, a promise and a battle cry. The black SUVs rolled up to the police union headquarters at dusk, engines purring. David adjusted his tactical vest, checking his weapon one last time. Beside him, Agent Morales coordinated with her team through an earpiece. "All units in position," she confirmed, "building exits covered." David studied the 5-story brick building. Light glowed from the third-floor windows where the union leaders were meeting. His intelligence suggested at least 8 corrupt officers inside, including the union president who'd helped smear him. "Remember," he told the assembled agents, "they're armed and desperate. Take no unnecessary risks." Morales nodded grimly. "Treasury agents are simultaneously seizing their accounts. They'll know they're finished as soon as we breach." David held up the federal warrant. "Buy the book. Let them see what real law enforcement looks like." They moved swiftly through the lobby, badges displayed. The elderly security guard took one look at their federal credentials and stepped aside, hands raised. In the stairwell, David took point, Morales on his 6. Their footsteps echoed off concrete walls as they climbed. At the 3rd floor, David paused, hearing angry voices through the door. "Account's frozen! Phillips isn't answering his phone!" "Has to be Harrington." David kicked the door open, leading with his badge. "Federal agents! Everyone on the ground!" The union office erupted in chaos. 8 officers scattered, reaching for weapons. David identified Union President Walsh behind a desk, shoving papers into a shredder. "Don't move!" Morales shouted as agents poured in behind them. Officer Reeves, a burly cop David recognized from his arrest, charged forward swinging. David sidestepped, using the man's momentum to slam him face first into a desk. The wooden surface cracked from the impact. 2 more officers rushed him. David dropped the first with a precise strike to the solar plexus. The second managed to land a wild punch before David swept his legs and drove a knee into his back, cuffing him in one fluid motion. "Stand down," he ordered, as the man thrashed beneath him. Across the room, Morales and her team efficiently subdued the others. Only Walsh remained, barricaded behind his desk with a gun drawn. "This is illegal," Walsh shouted, face red. "You have no jurisdiction." David advanced steadily, undaunted by the weapon. "Federal warrant says different. Your whole corrupt empire is falling tonight." "You're nothing," Walsh spat. "Just another—" David cut him off by vaulting the desk, disarming him with a swift wrist lock that sent the gun clattering away. He drove Walsh to the floor, twisting his arm up behind him. "I'm the man you tried to destroy," David growled, securing the cuffs. "How does it feel being on the other side?" Papers littered the floor, financial records, internal memos, evidence of their scheme. Morales's team quickly gathered everything, documenting the scene. Through the windows, David saw more federal vehicles arriving. The building was completely secured. Walsh struggled weakly as David hauled him up. "You don't understand what you're doing. We keep order. Without us, without you, maybe people will trust law enforcement again." David cut him off. "Your kind of order is just oppression with a badge." He surveyed the room. The once mighty Union leaders sprawled cuffed and subdued on the floor. Their faces showed fury, fear, and, most satisfyingly, disbelief that their power had been stripped away so completely. Reeves groaned from his position by the shattered desk. "You can't do this to us. We're cops." "No," David stated firmly. "You're criminals who hide behind badges, and now you'll face real justice." He turned to Morales. "Get them processed. Full booking, no special treatment. I want them in general population cells." "With pleasure, sir," she replied, directing her agents to begin moving prisoners. David walked to Walsh's desk, examining the half-shredded documents. Even these fragments would help build their case. He activated his radio. "Control, Harrington here. Union office secured. 8 suspects in custody. Evidence recovery underway. Send in the forensics team." "Copy that, Director," the reply crackled. DA's office and precinct headquarters also secured. Phase 1 complete. A small smile touched David's lips. Simultaneous raids across the city were dismantling the corrupt network piece by piece. The chief, the DA, judges, prison officials, all being arrested by federal agents who couldn't be bought or threatened. He watched as Walsh was led past, the Union president's swagger replaced by shuffling steps. Their eyes met briefly. David saw the moment Walsh finally understood. His power, his corruption, his ability to destroy lives with impunity. It was all over. "Your reign of terror ends tonight," David declared, voice carrying across the room. "No more quotas. No more targeting my people for profit. No more hiding behind your badge while you poison the very meaning of justice." The other prisoners were escorted out, leaving David alone with Morales in the debris-strewn office. Evidence teams would spend hours documenting everything, but the hard part was done. The corrupt power structure that had tried to crush him was now in chains. "We'll need your statement for the official record," Morales said. David nodded, holstering his weapon. "They tried to bury me. Instead, they gave me the motivation to tear down their whole corrupt system." Through the windows, he watched police union leaders being loaded into federal transport vehicles. Local news crews were arriving, cameras flashing. By morning, the whole city would know their protectors had been predators. "Time to show everyone the truth," he said quietly. "Every racist arrest, every shattered family, every dollar they made from destroying lives. It all comes to light now." Morales squeezed his shoulder supportively. "You did it, David. You beat them at their own game." He shook his head. "We're not finished. This is just the beginning of making things right." David adjusted his tie as cameras flashed throughout the packed hearing chamber. The House Oversight Committee members sat elevated before him, their faces stern. Behind them, the gallery buzzed with journalists, activists, and citizens who'd fought for this day. Chairman Thompson's gavel cracked sharply. "This hearing of the House Oversight Committee will come to order. Director Harrington, you may begin your testimony." David leaned into the microphone, his voice steady. "Thank you, Mr. Chairman. What I'm about to present reveals a criminal enterprise operating within our justice system, one that turned law enforcement into a profit center by targeting minorities." He nodded to his aide, who queued up the mall security footage on massive screens. The chamber fell silent as the video played. David watched the faces of committee members tighten as they witnessed his brutal arrest. The sound of Malik's screams echoed through the chamber. "That $100 bill," David continued, holding up the evidence bag, "was genuine U.S. currency. The Treasury Department's analysis confirms it." He placed the report into evidence. The counterfeit accusation was a pretext, one frequently used to justify false arrests of black shoppers. In the witness row behind him, Chief Doyle shifted uncomfortably. The DA kept his eyes down, while Walsh's face had gone pale. "But this was more than casual racism," David pressed on. "This was systematic." He produced a stack of financial records. These documents show how arrest quotas fed a pipeline to private prisons. Each black man arrested and convicted generated thousands in kickbacks. The records appeared on screen: spreadsheets tracking arrests by race, prison contracts with bonus clauses, offshore accounts receiving payments. David walked the committee through each damning piece. Chief Doyle received monthly payments of $25,000 through a shell company. The DA's wife suddenly acquired real estate worth millions. Union President Walsh's offshore accounts swelled with each surge in arrests. Representative Waters leaned forward. "Director Harrington, are you suggesting these officials deliberately targeted black citizens for profit?" "I'm not suggesting it, Congresswoman. I'm proving it." David produced more documents. These internal memos show explicit instructions to officers. Focus stops in minority neighborhoods. Use pretexts like counterfeit money or suspicious behavior. Make arrests stick by any means necessary. Chief Doyle erupted. "This is outrageous. We maintain order." "Order?" David's voice cut through the chamber like steel. "Is that what you call terrorizing communities? Destroying families for profit?" He turned to face his accusers directly. "You didn't maintain order. You maintained oppression." Representative Johnson interjected. "Chief Doyle, these financial records appear to show you personally profited over $2 million from increased incarceration rates. How do you respond?" Doyle's face flushed. I invoke my Fifth Amendment right." A murmur rippled through the gallery. David continued methodically presenting evidence: body cam footage of racist comments, arrest statistics showing stark racial disparities, internal communications celebrating conviction rates. "This wasn't about public safety," David declared. "It was about turning black bodies into profit. Every false arrest, every trumped-up charge, every coerced plea deal fed their machine." The DA finally spoke up, voice shaking. "We followed proper procedures." "Procedures?" David interrupted, producing another document. "Like this memo, where you instructed prosecutors to reject plea deals from black defendants unless they accepted private prison placement? The same prisons paying you kickbacks?" Chairman Thompson removed his glasses, rubbing his eyes. "Director Harrington, in your professional opinion, how deep does this corruption extend?" "We've identified similar patterns in 12 other major cities, Mr. Chairman." The same private prison companies, the same offshore accounts, the same targeting of minorities. This isn't isolated. It's an infection in our justice system. David gestured to a final set of documents. These records show systematic civil rights violations spanning 2 decades. Thousands of false arrests, millions in kickbacks, lives destroyed for profit. The chamber erupted in shouts of outrage. Spectators in the gallery stood, some crying, others calling for justice. Chairman Thompson banged his gavel repeatedly. "Order! We will have order." When the room quieted, David delivered his final statement. "I came here today not just as a federal officer, but as a father whose son watched him being brutalized, as a black man who's seen too many others destroyed by this corrupt system, as an American who believes justice cannot be sold to the highest bidder." He turned to face the cameras directly. "The evidence is clear. These men turned their badges into licenses for oppression. They twisted the law into a weapon against the very citizens they swore to protect. And they did it all for money." The screens behind him filled with headlines from across the country. "Police corruption exposed. Justice system for sale. Racist arrest quotas revealed." Representative Waters spoke again, her voice trembling with controlled anger. "Director Harrington, what do you recommend as our next steps?" "A complete federal takeover and restructuring of the implicated departments. Criminal prosecution of every official involved. Immediate review of all convictions connected to these schemes. And reparations to the communities they targeted." He paused, letting his words sink in. Justice is not a suggestion. It's not a privilege to be bought and sold. Justice is not optional. It is mandatory. The gallery erupted in applause. Chairman Thompson didn't try to silence it. Behind David, he could hear Doyle and the others being served with federal indictments, their protestations drowned out by the crowd's reaction. David remained seated, his posture straight, his expression resolute. For Malik, for every father who'd been humiliated in front of their child, for every community that had lived in fear of those meant to protect them, the tide was finally turning. 6 weeks after the congressional hearing, David stood before a wall of windows in his restored Homeland Security office. The morning sun cast long shadows across Washington, D.C., glinting off the Capitol dome in the distance. On his desk, newspaper headlines told the story of justice served. Corrupt police chief Doyle resigns in disgrace. Defaces 20 years for racketeering. Private prison contracts canceled amid scandal. Racist cops fired, face federal charges. His phone buzzed. A text from Nia. "Turn on the news." David clicked on the office TV. The morning shows were covering the latest developments. Former Chief Doyle being led away in handcuffs, his face ashen. The DA's mug shot splashed across screens nationwide. Footage of prison transport buses leaving now shuttered private facilities. A knock at his door interrupted his thoughts. "Come in," David called. His secretary entered, smiling. "Director Harrington, your son is here." Malik bounded in, still wearing his school backpack. His eyes were bright, his shoulders straight, so different from the frightened boy who'd watched his father thrown to the ground months ago. "Dad, did you see? They're showing those bad cops going to jail on TV." David hugged his son tight. "I saw, buddy. Justice takes time, but it always comes. My teacher talked about you in class today." Malik beamed. "She said you're a hero for fixing the broken system." David knelt to meet his son's eyes. The real heroes were the thousands of people who suffered in silence for years. We just helped give them a voice. His phone rang. The Attorney General. "Great work on the testimony to the Senate Justice Committee yesterday," she said. "We've identified 3 more cities with similar corruption patterns. Your task force is making waves." "Thank you, ma'am." But we're just getting started. After hanging up, David gathered his coat. Ready for our special trip, Malik? His son nodded eagerly. They'd planned this moment for weeks, returning to the mall where it all began. Not to relive the trauma, but to reclaim the space. The drive was different this time. No tension, no shadow of prejudice hanging over them. Just father and son, heading to buy new sneakers like any other family. As they walked through the mall entrance, David noticed the changes immediately. New security protocols posted prominently. A diverse staff manning the information desk. Training certificates showing updated bias prevention programs. But the biggest change was in how people reacted to them. An elderly woman stopped them near the fountain. "Mr. Harrington, I just want to thank you. My grandson was wrongfully arrested last year. Thanks to your work, his case is being reviewed." A teenage boy working at the pretzel stand called out, "Director Harrington, you're my hero, sir." Even the mall security officers, a completely new team, nodded respectfully as they passed. Malik squeezed his father's hand. "Dad, everyone knows who you are now. They know what we stand for, son. That's what matters." They reached the shoe store, the same one where it had all started. The old cashier was gone, replaced by a young woman who greeted them warmly. "Welcome to Foot Locker. It's an honor, Director Harrington." As Malik tried on sneakers, other shoppers stopped to shake David's hand. A group of young black men thanked him for exposing the arrest quotas. A white mother told him how the hearings had opened her eyes to systemic racism. "How about these, Dad?" Malik held up a pair of bright blue basketball shoes. David smiled. "Perfect choice." At the register, David pulled out his wallet. The cashier rang up the sale efficiently, professionally. When he handed her a $100 bill, there was no suspicion, no silent alarm, no called security. "Would you like a receipt with that, sir?" "Yes, please." As they walked out with Malik's new shoes, a local news crew spotted them. The reporter approached respectfully. "Director Harrington, do you have any comment on the latest arrests in the police corruption case?" David looked at Malik, then back at the camera. "Just this. America works best when justice works for everyone. We're building a system where no child has to watch their parent being humiliated for the color of their skin, where no community lives in fear of those sworn to protect them." Malik tugged his sleeve. "Dad, can we get ice cream?" David laughed. "Of course, buddy." They sat in the food court, Malik happily devouring a chocolate sundae. Around them, the mall bustled with normal activity. Families shopping, teenagers hanging out, security officers patrolling professionally. "Dad?" Malik asked between bites. "Remember when you told me never to let bullies win?" "I remember. You didn't let them win. You beat them." David wiped a spot of ice cream from his son's chin. "We beat them, Malik. All of us together. The people who spoke up, the journalists who investigated, the witnesses who testified, everyone who refused to stay silent." Malik nodded solemnly. "So what do we do now?" David watched the diverse crowd flowing through the mall. People of all colors shopping, laughing, living without fear. This was what justice looked like. This was what they'd fought for. He leaned close to his son, voice soft but strong. "We don't bow. We rise." Malik's face broke into a proud smile. He sat up straighter, chin high, ice cream forgotten. In that moment, he wasn't just David's son. He was the future they'd fought to protect. A future where dignity and justice weren't determined by the color of one's skin. I hope you enjoyed that story. Please share it with your friends and subscribe so that you do not miss out on the next one. In the meantime, I have handpicked 2 stories for you that I think you will enjoy. Have a great day.